Have you ever meant nothing to someone who once swore you meant everything? One day you're in constant contact, laughing, sharing, connecting, and then one morning you wake up and it's just silence. No fight, no goodbye, no reason, just absence. She ghosted you and it shattered your sense of reality. You check your phone like an addict. You replay conversations. You blame yourself. You wonder what you did wrong. But let me tell you something brutal and freeing. She gave you a gift. Not the kind wrapped in ribbons. The kind that rips your chest open and shows you the raw truth. The kind that leaves you alone, angry and drowning, until you decide to climb out of it. That silence, that vanishing act, it was your wake-up call. Because this isn't about her anymore. It never really was. This is about the part of you that tolerated uncertainty, that overgave, that begged for clarity instead of creating it. Now, you've got a choice. You can chase a ghost, or you can become the kind of man who haunts her memory, not by being petty, but by becoming legendary. The man who doesn't need revenge because success is louder. The man who doesn't text back, doesn't break down, doesn't beg, because he's too busy becoming rare. You take that heartbreak and you make it holy. You take that rejection and you make it fuel. You learn what she never taught you. Self-respect isn't asked for. It's earned in silence, built in solitude, and radiated through presence. Stoicism isn't pretending not to care. It's learning to care about the right things, your purpose, your values, your evolution. She thought you'd spiral. She thought you'd fold. But you're not chasing her anymore. You're chasing your highest self, and she's going to feel that shift without a single word from you. That's the power of becoming untouchable. That's the rise of a Stoic. If you're done being the man who overextends for people who disappear, if you're ready to rise into someone she'll regret losing, hit that like button. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. My silence is my power. Now, let's begin. Number 1. The cold silence was a gift. She vanished, just like that. 1 minute you're laughing at her texts, making plans, maybe even daydreaming about a future. The next, nothing, not even a slow fade, no awkward excuse, just cold, clinical absence. You check your phone too often, hoping for the dots to pop up. They don't, and that's when the storm starts in your mind. You question everything, your worth, your words, your instincts. You replay every detail trying to solve a puzzle that was rigged to collapse. But what if I told you that silence was sacred? What if her disappearance was the moment life stopped letting you play small? Because here's the truth most men never grasp. She didn't ghost you to destroy you. She ghosted you to expose you, to show you the parts of yourself that were desperate, attached, afraid of being alone. And that discomfort you feel right now, that's your ego dying. That's your illusions collapsing. That's the beginning of the man you're meant to become. See, ghosting only hurts when you expect closure from someone who never planned to offer it. It only stings when you place your peace in someone else's hands. But silence, pure, brutal silence, forces you to reclaim your power. It forces you to realize the only person you ever needed validation from was staring back in the mirror. She thought you'd fall apart. Instead, you fell into place. Her absence carved out space for clarity, for evolution, for rebirth. She left, and now you get to fill that void with purpose. You don't chase ghosts, you bury them with discipline, with detachment, with silence of your own, because real strength doesn't announce itself. It moves in shadows, it thrives in stillness, and that's where you are now. Alone, yes, but not broken, not begging, not looking back. You're becoming the kind of man who speaks through action, not words, through progress, not pain, through presence, not desperation. The silence she left you with, that was never the end. It was your invitation to begin. Number 2, the ego death you needed. When she disappeared, it wasn't just the relationship that ended. It was your illusion of control. The version of you that needed constant reassurance, that tied his worth to her attention, that looked for identity in her affection, that version died. And yes, it hurt like hell, but ego deaths always do. They don't come peacefully. They come through shock, through rejection, through silence so loud it forces you to confront the parts of yourself you've ignored for too long. You were never just grieving her. You were grieving who you thought you were with her. You thought you were strong, but you bent. You thought you were grounded, but you chased. You thought you were calm, but you obsessed. She didn't just ghost you. She held up a mirror and let you watch your identity crack. That was her last gift, whether she meant it or not. And here's the truth. Most men never recover from that hit because they cling to their old self. But you're different. You don't resist the death. You walk into it, and you come out sharper. This is where your Stoic evolution truly begins. You stop seeking comfort. You start seeking clarity. You stop chasing pleasure. You start cultivating peace. You stop asking why she left, and start asking why you settled. You don't numb the pain. You use it, like a blade to cut away every weak part of yourself that let her become your source of validation in the first place. Because when the ego dies, the truth survives. And the truth is simple. You don't need anyone who needs to vanish to feel powerful. You don't need anyone who makes you beg for consistency. You need only your mission, your code, your presence. The man you're becoming now isn't interested in being chosen. He's too busy choosing himself. And when the ego is gone, so is the need to explain, to prove, to chase. You rise in silence. You evolve in solitude. And from that, you build a life no one can ghost their way back into. Number 3, detachment makes you dangerous. She expected you to feel it forever. The sting, the confusion, the emptiness. She thought her silence would echo endlessly inside your chest. That's what ghosting does. It creates an unfinished wound, an open loop, a need for closure that never comes. And most men, they spiral, they react, they reach out, they lose control. But not you, because the moment you chose detachment, you became dangerous. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't obey the feeling. You acknowledge the pain and then you put it to work. You don't lash out. You don't chase. You channel. While she's out there collecting attention, you're collecting discipline. While she's looking for the next emotional fix, you're mastering yours. And with every day you stay silent, stay focused, stay grounded, you take back more of your power. Because emotional control is the rarest strength a man can have. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's surgical, cold, focused, precise. She can't manipulate what she can't trigger, she can't hook what she can't shake. The more detached you become, the less leverage she has. And here's the twist. Detachment doesn't repel them, it pulls them in. When you no longer need her validation, she starts questioning her worth in your eyes. When you no longer seek her presence, she starts to feel your absence. Detachment creates mystery, and mystery is power. But you don't do it for her, you do it for you. You detach because peace matters more than attention, because your mission matters more than her messages, because you've learned. Any woman who can ghost you doesn't deserve access to your emotions. Not now. Not ever. This is your edge now. Calm, unbothered, untouchable. Not because you've gone numb, but because you've gone inward. You're no longer on the emotional battlefield. You're on the throne. Number 4, don't respond. Reinvent. The moment she ghosted you, she expected noise, a text, a call, a breakdown. That's the typical pattern: disappear and wait for the reaction. But when none comes, it throws off the script. You didn't beg, you didn't accuse, you didn't even ask why. You went dark. And in that quiet, you chose something far more powerful than a response. You chose reinvention. Most men think silence is weakness, that if you don't fight for her, you didn't care. Wrong. Real strength is what happens when you stop fighting for someone who walked away and start building someone they'll never get close to again. Reinvention isn't about proving her wrong. It's about proving to yourself who you really are when you're not distracted by illusion, by lust, by someone else's inconsistency. You're not chasing closure. You're chasing greatness now. And greatness doesn't beg, it builds. So you hit the gym, not for revenge, but to respect your vessel. You stack habits, not to impress her, but to sharpen your edge. You cut distractions, elevate your circle, dial in your focus, not to be seen, but to be unstoppable. She expected heartbreak. What she triggered was a metamorphosis, a man so focused on his own evolution that her ghosting became irrelevant. You're not who you were when she left, and that's the win. This is the part she never sees, the part after the silence, where you level up in private, where you rise with no announcement. And one day, maybe weeks, maybe months later, she checks your name, your feed, your life, and she sees something she never expected. A man she no longer has access to, becoming someone she'll never forget. You didn't respond, you reinvented. And that silence, that's the sound of her regret starting to grow. Number 5. Indifference is irresistible. Nothing confuses someone more than the power of your indifference. She expected tears, not silence. A long message, not calm distance. She wanted to feel important by watching you fall apart. But instead, you showed her a truth that cuts deeper than any words ever could. You're good either way. And that unnerves her. Because now she's not sure if she meant as much as she thought she did. Indifference is often misunderstood. It's not spite. It's not passive aggression. It's clarity. It's peace. It's the quiet understanding that you don't place your value in someone else's ability to stay, that you no longer chase what disrupts your balance. And that's rare, because most people are addicted to reactions. They want to know they still matter. When you give them nothing, no validation, no proof, no pain to feed off, it creates a vacuum, a question, a curiosity. And curiosity is the beginning of obsession. You became magnetic the moment you stopped trying to be. When you withheld your attention, you became unpredictable. And unpredictability is power. That's the dark psychology of detachment. When you no longer try to win her back, she starts wondering if she ever really had you. Your indifference is not rejection, it's elevation. You've outgrown the need to be chosen. Now you choose yourself. And ironically, the less you care, the more they crave your care. But this isn't about revenge, it's about peace. You don't act cold to manipulate. You become neutral to protect your energy. Because a stoic man isn't ice, he's fire under control. Your calm isn't emptiness, it's discipline. And in a world of emotional chaos, indifference is irresistible. Not because it's fake, but because it's rare. She ghosted a version of you that no longer exists. And the man you are now, he doesn't flinch, he doesn't chase, he doesn't need to be remembered, because he's too focused on becoming unforgettable. Number 6, make her regret the vanish. She thought she disappeared and left you in pieces, but what she really did was vanish before the glow-up, before the transformation, before the rise. And that's the part she never calculated, that walking away wouldn't break you, it would unlock you. And now, without a word, without a warning, You're becoming everything she never expected: focused, detached, disciplined, elevated. This isn't about proving anything to her. This is about turning pain into pressure and pressure into progress. Because regret doesn't come from what she left, it comes from what she missed. She walked out before the storm passed, before you stopped doubting yourself, before you started cutting fat mentally and emotionally. And now, you move like a man who doesn't look back, a man who doesn't explain, doesn't justify, doesn't invite old energy back into his future. And here's what happens next. They always check, quietly, randomly, late at night. She'll scroll your profile, she'll ask mutuals, she'll remember something small and click just to see. And what she sees will sting, because it won't be desperation, it won't be sadness, it'll be momentum. A man who turned silence into strength, who let the ghost vanish but didn't stop living. That's the real regret. Not losing someone they once liked, but watching that person become someone they'll never have access to again. You didn't need to call, you didn't need to post quotes or send late-night paragraphs. You just needed to keep moving, and you did. The best revenge isn't attention, it's transformation. She left thinking the story was over, but it was just the prologue. Now you're the main character, and her role, it ended when she vanished. Number 7. Dark energy, light discipline. Pain is energy, rejection is fuel. You felt the hit, hard, but instead of collapsing, you collected that darkness and turned it into drive. That's what separates the broken from the unstoppable. Most men sit in the ashes. You build from them. You're not running from the pain. You're harnessing it, directing it, turning it into discipline so cold and focused it looks effortless. This isn't about pretending it didn't hurt. It did. It cracked something inside, but cracks let the light in. And now, the only thing stronger than the ache she left behind is the system you built on top of it. You're in the gym, putting in reps when you don't feel like it. You're up early, working when no one's watching. You've replaced overthinking with execution. You no longer seek her attention. You track your progress. You no longer crave her presence. You crave results. This is dark psychology at its cleanest form. You take what was meant to crush you and use it as structure. You let the heartbreak turn into hunger. You let the silence become space, not for sulking, but for strategy. Because every man has two options after getting ghosted: spiral or sharpen. You chose the blade. She didn't expect that. She thought you'd stall. But you turned the chaos into clarity. That's light discipline, moving with intention even when emotions try to drag you back. And every day you stay consistent, you grow more dangerous. Not because you're vengeful, but because you're focused. And that kind of man, the one who controls himself in the dark, he owns the light. She left, and you didn't just survive. You recalibrated, quietly, relentlessly. Now the darkness works for you. Number 8. Kill the fantasy. Respect reality. The version of her you miss, that wasn't her. It was the image you built in your head. The late-night texts, the chemistry, the laughs, they were real, but they weren't the full truth. You saw potential and mistook it for promise. You created a story and forgot to check the character. And now, the most important thing you can do isn't to move on from her. It's to kill the fantasy. You weren't ghosted by the woman of your dreams. You were ghosted by someone who didn't have the courage to communicate. That's not romantic. That's weak. And weakness isn't what you're chasing anymore. Stoicism demands reality, no projections, no false hope, just facts. And the fact is, she showed you exactly who she was. You just didn't want to see it until she left. But now, your vision is clean. You stop remembering the best parts and start recognizing the whole picture. She wasn't your peace. She was a distraction. She wasn't your partner. She was your lesson. And lessons aren't meant to be held on to. They're meant to be learned from, then released. That's how real strength works. Not in clinging to what felt good, but in cutting ties with what wasn't true. Let go of the idealized version. Let go of the maybe if, and what if she comes back? She left. That's the truth, and in that truth is your freedom. Because when you stop mourning who she never really was, you make room for someone who won't vanish the moment things get real. You want connection, not confusion, depth, not drama, presence, not potential. And that begins with killing the fantasy and finally respecting the reality. Number 9. Stillness is mastery. When most men get ghosted, they panic. They vent to friends. They overthink. They overpost. They fill the silence with noise, trying to feel in control again. But the ones who rise, they do the opposite. They get still. No rants, no passive-aggressive posts, no late-night just checking in texts, just stillness, controlled, focused, unshakable. Stillness is misunderstood. People think it's weakness. It's not. It's power under full control, because only a weak man needs the last word. Only a desperate one needs to be heard. But a stoic man doesn't flinch. He doesn't react. He doesn't perform. He observes. He studies the silence and lets it speak. And that silence says more than any text ever could. You don't control me. You don't shake me. I've outgrown the need to explain myself to someone who vanished without a word. This is the part that makes them uneasy. Your calm becomes unnerving. Your peace becomes a question they can't answer. They expected emotional chaos. They got a man who moves in silence and builds in shadows. That kind of self-control, that's magnetic, because real power isn't loud. It's measured. It's found in the man who no longer needs to announce his worth. He just is. Stillness isn't emptiness. It's mastery. You've mastered your impulses. You've mastered your response. And most importantly, you've mastered your energy. You give it only where it's earned, never where it's expected. That's not cold. That's evolved. You're not holding back. You're holding steady. And in a world full of noise, stillness isn't silence. It's signal. The signal that you've arrived. And there's no turning back. Number 10. Become the man who doesn't chase. She left. And maybe for a while a part of you wanted her to come back. Wanted closure, a second chance, a reason. But that part of you is gone now, because somewhere between the silence and the self-respect, you became a different man. A man who no longer waits for people to realize your worth. A man who no longer hands his power to someone who couldn't even send a goodbye. You've become the man who doesn't chase, not because you're bitter, but because you've seen what happens when you overinvest in someone who underdelivers. You've learned that the man who chases loses leverage. He gives away his time, his focus, his energy. For what? A breadcrumb of attention? A maybe? A temporary fix? Not anymore. The man you are now walks with purpose. He doesn't chase women. He attracts them. Through his discipline, through his presence, through his refusal to settle for anything less than alignment. He doesn't need to be seen. He makes his life undeniable. He doesn't seek validation. He lives by values. And women feel that. They feel the shift when a man stops chasing and starts evolving. They sense the detachment, the calm, the unavailability. And suddenly, you're the one who's scarce. You're the one who's in demand. Chasing is for the man who thinks he has something to prove. But you've proven it. To yourself. You're not desperate for connection anymore. You're selective. You're grounded. And if someone walks away, so be it. Let them. That's your filter now. Because when you stop chasing what doesn't serve you, you make space for what actually will. And that's not just attraction, that's power. The kind of power that doesn't need to speak. It just moves, unbothered, unavailable, unmatched. She ghosted you, and for a while you thought that was the end of the story, but now you know it was the beginning. The moment she walked out was the moment you walked in, to yourself, into your discipline, your clarity, your evolution. You didn't just survive the silence, you used it. You became sharper, quieter, more focused. And now, she's the ghost. You're the legend. You don't chase anymore. You don't explain. You don't fold. You build, you detach, and you rise. You've mastered the hardest lesson of all, that peace doesn't come from getting them back. It comes from never needing them again. You've outgrown the boy who begged for answers. You've become the man who moves without permission. And that kind of man, he doesn't fear loss. He welcomes it. Because anything that leaves your life and leaves you stronger wasn't a loss. It was a lesson. Now you walk forward with zero need to look back. No more what-ifs. No more maybe some days. Just you. Focused, grounded, stoic, unshakable. If you're done chasing ghosts, if you're ready to reclaim your power, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment below. I am the storm she didn't see coming. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay grounded, and remember, your evolution is your revenge. Until next time, stay stoic.